poor girl helped an old man cross the street, unaware he was the town's richest farmer. It was a crisp autumn morning when Emily Carter rushed down the sidewalk, her worn shoes clicking against the pavement. She was late for her shift at the bakery, and the sky was heavy with clouds, threatening rain. Her blonde hair, hastily pulled into a ponytail, fluttered in the breeze as she jogged, eyes fixed ahead. As she approached the intersection, she saw him. An elderly man, hunched over, stood at the curb, trembling as he gripped his cane. Cars swerved past him, honking, as he struggled to cross before the light changed. Emily slowed to a stop. She watched as a car cut too close, causing him to stagger. A group of pedestrians walked by, avoiding eye contact, one even glaring at him. A pang in her chest made her step forward. Without thinking, she gently placed her hand on his arm. "Sir, may I help you cross?" He blinked in surprise, then nodded slowly, a small, grateful smile forming. Emily helped him across the street, guiding him carefully as traffic sped by. Her gaze darted nervously, ensuring no cars came too close. "Thank you, young lady," the old man said once they reached the sidewalk. "Most people don't even look at me these days." Emily smiled warmly. "It's no trouble at all. I'm happy to help." As they reached the curb, she noticed a sleek black car idling just down the street. The tinted windows reflected the gray sky above, and the car seemed to shimmer with wealth, like an alien presence in her world of humble neighborhoods. The car door opened, and a tall man stepped out. His dark hair was neatly styled, his suit perfectly tailored. He stood a few yards away, watching her closely, his posture confident. She couldn't help but notice the sharpness in his features, the stern set of his jaw. But what struck her most was the way he was looking at them. He wasn't rushing to approach, nor speaking to anyone. He stood still, eyes locked onto her as she helped the elderly man. She felt awkward, as though she was being watched too closely. The man's eyes lingered, but he didn't approach. Instead, he stayed at the curb, his expression unreadable. Emily briefly met his gaze before turning her attention back to the elderly man, ensuring he was safe. As the elderly man took a slow step forward, he turned to Emily, his voice low. "You're one of the rare ones," he said, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that surprised her. Emily blinked in surprise, unsure how to respond. "I'm just trying to help," she said softly. He nodded slowly, and without another word, shuffled down the street. Emily watched him walk away, feeling a warmth spread through her chest despite the cold morning air. But she also felt unsettled by the man in the car. As she turned to leave, she noticed the black car hadn't moved. The man inside had not taken his eyes off her. She shook her head, pushing the thought away. She had a job to get to, no time to dwell on strange encounters. Still, as she walked away, a lingering feeling told her that this moment was the beginning of something she couldn't yet understand. Emily walked up the gravel path to the Wallace Organic Farm, her heart racing. She had applied for the job the night before, needing extra income for her brother's school fees. She had no farming experience, but was determined to make it work. The farm was vast, and she could already tell it was much larger than anything she was used to. When she reached the front door, she knocked and took a deep breath. Moments later, the door creaked open, and she was greeted by the same elderly man she had helped cross the street just days earlier. "Mr. Wallace?" Emily asked, surprised. The old man smiled. "Well, I'll be. The young lady who helped me across. What brings you here?" "I'm looking for work," Emily said, feeling embarrassed. "I need a job to help support my brother's education." "Well, you've come to the right place," he said with a grin. "I could always use an extra pair of hands around here." He motioned for her to come inside. "Let me get my son. He's in charge of the farm now." Emily stepped inside, taking in the scent of freshly baked bread. The warmth of the house put her at ease, though she still felt out of place. A few moments later, the door opened again. A man walked in, Tall, sharp features and an air of confidence. His crisp suit and perfectly styled hair were a stark contrast to the farm life she was used to. His eyes scanned the room with an almost distant look. "Father, what's going on?" he asked, his voice smooth but with suspicion. "This is Emily," Mr. Wallace said. "She's here for the job. She's not here to ask for money, son. She's here to work." Daniel Wallace blinked in surprise. "I see," he said, his tone cooling. He sized Emily up quickly. "We're in need of some help, so I suppose that's fine. But what exactly do you expect to do here?" "I'll do anything," Emily replied, trying to sound confident. "I can work in the garden, clean the barn, help with the animals, whatever you need." Daniel hesitated, his eyes still cautious. "Very well," he said after a moment. "You can start tomorrow. Let's see how you do." Emily nodded, grateful. As she turned to leave, Mr. Wallace gave her a knowing smile. "Good luck, my dear," he said softly. The next day, Emily arrived early, eager to prove herself. She was assigned to the vegetable garden, pulling weeds, planting seeds, and harvesting tomatoes. It was hard work, but she didn't mind. The rhythm brought a sense of peace she hadn't expected. Daniel appeared only occasionally, watching from a distance. Whenever he did, Emily could feel his eyes on her, studying her as if unsure of her intentions. There was something about him, distant and closed off, that made her hesitate to approach. Still, Emily worked hard, taking pride in her results. The farm was beautiful, alive with possibility. It felt like a world she had never known. One afternoon, Emily was cleaning the chicken coop when Daniel appeared by the gate, watching her. She tried not to let his presence throw her off. After a while, Daniel spoke. "You're good at this," he said, his voice low. "I didn't expect someone like you to be so capable." Emily looked up, meeting his gaze. "I've had to learn how to work hard. It's all I've known." Daniel nodded, but didn't say more. As he turned to leave, Emily noticed a flicker in his eyes. Was it regret? Sympathy? She wasn't sure. It wasn't much, but it was the first real connection they'd had since she arrived, and though Daniel's distance still lingered, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than the cold exterior he showed to the world. The days on the farm passed in a steady rhythm, and Emily settled into her routine. She woke early to tend to the garden, working the soil until her hands were raw, then helped with the animals in the afternoon. She kept her head down, focused and determined to prove herself. Daniel, as usual, kept his distance. He occasionally oversaw the farm operations, his presence a silent reminder of the world he commanded. Emily couldn't help but notice the contrast between the way he moved through the farm and how she worked. He was detached, his expression unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something deep, almost like a wound that had never healed. One afternoon, while carrying a basket of ripe tomatoes, Emily tripped over a loose stone. The basket flew, and she landed hard, her knees scraping the dirt and tomatoes scattering in every direction. She winced in pain, trying to get up, but her legs felt weak. Before she could steady herself, she felt a hand on her arm. "Easy." Daniel's voice was low, surprisingly gentle. He didn't say anything else, but helped her to her feet. Without a word, he knelt down and began gathering the tomatoes, his movements careful. Emily stood, brushing dirt from her knees, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Thank you," she muttered, still trying to regain her balance. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a white handkerchief. Without asking, he gently wiped the dirt from her cheek, his touch almost tender. His fingers brushed her skin, and for a moment, Emily forgot to breathe. Surprised, she asked, "You don't like strangers, do you?" Daniel's eyes flickered, perhaps amusement or something deeper. He didn't answer right away, but stood and handed her the handkerchief, his gaze not quite meeting hers. "I don't trust people who show me their true selves," he replied quietly. "I'm not used to people being real." Emily felt a pang of sympathy but said nothing, merely nodding as she took the handkerchief from him. Later that evening, after finishing her chores, Emily went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. As the sun set, casting a warm, golden glow across the farm, she noticed Daniel sitting alone on the porch, staring into the distance. She had never seen him like this, so still, so alone. He was holding a cigarette, the smoke curling into the air. He didn't seem to notice her watching him. Emily hesitated, unsure of what to do. She had seen him always busy, surrounded by responsibilities, but tonight he looked different, vulnerable even. She didn't want to interrupt his solitude, but felt an urge to offer something. Without thinking, she brewed a pot of tea, carefully poured it into a cup and grabbed a plate with a biscuit. She headed outside. Standing at the edge of the porch, she watched him for a moment. Then, with a deep breath, she walked over and placed the cup and plate beside him on the railing, without a word. Daniel didn't move at first, and Emily almost thought he hadn't noticed. Slowly, he turned his head, his eyes softening as they met hers. He said nothing, but there was something in his expression, a flicker of appreciation or surprise. Emily nodded once and turned to leave, but before she could step away, Daniel's voice stopped her. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." She smiled softly, not turning back. Everyone needs a little warmth now and then. For a moment they stood in silence, the evening air heavy with unspoken words. The only sound was the soft rustle of the leaves and the faint hum of insects. It wasn't much, this simple act of kindness, but something shifted between them. It was small, just a cup of tea and a biscuit, but to Emily, it felt like the first crack in the wall Daniel had built around himself. As she walked back into the house, she realized she had taken a step forward too. In some small way, she had reached him. Over the next few weeks, the distance between Emily and Daniel began to shrink. Small gestures, brief exchanges, and quiet moments started breaking through the walls that had kept them apart. They talked more, not about the farm or work, but about themselves. It began one evening when Emily sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Daniel had been busy all day with paperwork, but as the light faded, he appeared at the door with a cup of tea. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. Emily smiled, patting the spot beside her. "Of course." They sat in silence for a while, the warm air settling around them, comfortable but filled with unspoken things. "So, tell me something," Daniel said, breaking the silence. "What do you like to do when you're not working?" Emily thought for a moment. "I don't have much time for anything else, but I enjoy reading when I can, and I love being outside. Nature makes everything feel peaceful." Daniel nodded. "I get that. Nature has a way of resetting your mind." Emily glanced at him, curious. "What about you? What do you do for fun?" Daniel's smile faltered. "Fun? I used to enjoy a lot of things, but things changed when my mom died." Emily's brow furrowed. "I'm sorry, how old were you?" 15, Daniel said quietly. "She was sick for a long time. I didn't know how to handle it. After she passed, my dad, he shut himself off, became a different person, and I buried myself in work. It was easier than facing the emptiness." Emily's heart went out to him, but she stayed silent, letting him continue. "I became so focused on the business, on building something, that I forgot how to live," Daniel continued, his voice quieter now. "I didn't know how to be a person anymore, just a businessman." Emily sat in silence, processing his words. "I'm sorry, Daniel," she said softly. "It sounds like you've been carrying that alone for a long time." Daniel didn't respond immediately. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the stars. "I guess I have," he said after a long pause. Emily felt a need to share. "I get it. "I've lost a lot too," she said, voice shaky. Daniel turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Emily took a deep breath. "When I was a kid, my mom died too. My dad wasn't around, so my little brother and I had to fend for ourselves. One night we had nowhere to go and slept at the bus station. It was cold, scary. I remember holding him close, praying it would get better." Daniel's expression softened. "I can't imagine that, being that young and taking care of someone else." Emily smiled faintly. "I didn't have a choice. But we made it through, and I learned to be strong, to take care of the people I love." There was a long silence. Finally, Daniel broke it. "I've never met anyone stronger than me. Except for you, Emily." Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know how to respond, so she simply smiled. They continued sitting there, talking about lighter things, books, favorite foods, and sharing awkward laughs about their childhoods. Through it all, there was a new honesty between them, a connection that hadn't been there before. Later that week, Daniel invited Emily to dinner in the farmhouse kitchen. The evening was simple: freshly baked bread, some cheese, and a bottle of wine. Soft classical music played in the background, its melody winding through the air like a gentle caress. They talked about nothing important, just enjoying each other's company. And for the first time in a long while, Emily felt something unexpected: peace. The walls that had once divided them, his coldness and her wariness, began to fall away, and for a brief moment, Emily thought that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't as lonely as it had seemed. The days on the farm passed in a quiet rhythm. Emily and Daniel shared countless conversations, some brief, others long into the evening, filled with moments of understanding. She found herself looking forward to them, feeling a bond form that felt different from anything before. But something remained unsaid. One afternoon, while sorting through old newspapers in the farmhouse attic, Emily found an article tucked inside a forgotten magazine: Daniel Wallace, the young CEO, transforming organic farming. The photo was unmistakable. Daniel stood confidently in a suit, surrounded by paperwork, a determined look on his face. The article praised his rise to power and his role in revolutionizing organic farming. But as she read, shock hit. The article mentioned his wealth, his business ventures, and his place in elite circles. The man she had come to know, working beside him in the barn, covered in dirt, was the same person who had built an empire of organic farms. Anger and confusion hit Emily. She sat frozen, staring at the photo of the man who had kept this huge part of his life hidden from her. Why had he pretended to be just another worker? Why hadn't he trusted her enough to be honest? That evening, after the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily found Daniel in the barn, inspecting the equipment. The weight of the truth pressed down on her chest, and she couldn't hold it in anymore. "Daniel," she said, her voice tight, "why didn't you tell me?" He looked up, surprised. "Tell you what? Why didn't you tell me who you really are?" she demanded. "Why did you pretend to be just a worker here? Why didn't you tell me you were the CEO, the richest man in this town?" Daniel's face hardened. He put down the tool he was holding. "I didn't want you to see me as just a rich guy. I wanted you to see me for who I really am, not for my wealth." Emily's chest tightened, and tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't love you for your money, Daniel. I loved you. The man who helped me when I needed it, who shared his fears with me." Daniel softened, but didn't step closer. "Then why is this such a big deal?" "I didn't lie to you. I just didn't want to be defined by my wealth." Emily wiped her eyes, shaking her head. "You didn't lie, but you didn't trust me enough to be honest with me. You kept this hidden, and that hurts more than anything." She turned to leave, but Daniel gently grabbed her arm. "Emily, wait," he said softly. "I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted something real, something not influenced by who I am or what I have." "Something real?" Emily turned back, voice breaking. You think hiding who you really are is real? I can't be with someone who doesn't trust me enough to tell me the truth." She pulled her arm away and walked out of the barn, her heart pounding. The tears she'd held back for so long began to fall as she made her way to the farmhouse. Daniel stood there, watching her leave, his face filled with frustration and regret. He hadn't wanted this, but he knew deep down that he hadn't given her the chance to truly know him. Inside the house, Emily packed her things quickly, her mind racing. She couldn't stay here anymore, not when everything felt like a lie. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected the man she cared for to hide such a huge part of his life. Meanwhile, Mr. Wallace sat quietly in the living room, aware of the tension. He hadn't interfered, but his heart ached as he watched Emily leave. He understood his son's reasons, but knew the damage secrets could cause. As Emily stepped toward the door, ready to leave, Mr. Wallace's voice stopped her. "Emily," he called softly. She turned to face him, tear-streaked but resolute. He gave her a sad, knowing look. "You'll understand someday," he said quietly, his voice filled with regret. "He's not as simple as he seems." The days after Emily's departure were quieter on the farm. Daniel went through his routine, but it felt hollow. He spent long hours in the office, overseeing operations, signing papers, and making decisions that had once seemed important. But now they felt meaningless. No satisfaction, no sense of accomplishment, just repetitive motions. He couldn't shake the image of Emily, her bright eyes, her soft voice, her smile, despite the hardships. He missed her laughter, the warmth in her gaze, the way she had quietly placed a cup of tea in front of him. Every moment they had shared felt like it had been wiped away, leaving only the empty echo of what might have been. As days passed, Daniel walked the farmhouse and fields, searching for peace, but all he could think about was his loss. The farm, once his pride, now felt like a prison, a place he couldn't escape, even though he had everything he could want. He recalled their conversation in the garden, the night Emily had shared her painful past. She had trusted him with her deepest memories, yet he had withheld the truth. He had kept the fact that he wasn't just a farm worker but the heir to a multi-million-dollar business. He had wanted to keep her from seeing him as a man of wealth, but in the end, his lies drove her away. One evening, Daniel sat in his office, staring blankly at spreadsheets. The glow of the computer screen provided no clarity. His mind kept drifting back to Emily, to how she had looked when she left the barn, tears in her eyes, her heart breaking from the lies he had told. He heard footsteps behind him, followed by a chair scraping the floor. His father, Henry, entered the room. Henry had been unusually quiet since Emily left. The old man had been recovering from a mild illness, but had clearly been paying attention to everything that had happened, the exchanges between them, the growing tension, and the fallout. Daniel didn't turn around as his father spoke, his voice low and filled with unspoken truths. "You're losing yourself, Daniel," Henry said quietly. "You've lived in the shadow of your work, your image, your reputation, but now you're losing something more important than any of that." Daniel remained still, unsure of how to respond. His father's words felt like a burden, as if the truth was finally coming to light. "You might have all the money in the world, son," Henry continued, "but that won't fill the emptiness inside you. You can lose the farm, lose the business, but don't lose the one person who's made you want to be better." Daniel closed his eyes, the truth settling deep in his chest. He had been so focused on building his empire that he had forgotten what truly mattered. Emily had shown him that. She had made him want to be a better man. "I didn't mean for her to leave, Dad," Daniel said quietly, his voice cracking with regret. I didn't know how to be honest with her." Henry sighed softly but firmly. "You'll never know unless you try. Don't wait too long, son. Don't wait until it's too late." Daniel didn't respond, but the weight of his father's words hung in the air. He had to fix this. He had to find a way to make things right with Emily. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what he could do to make things right. He had built a life around success and wealth, but it had cost him something far more valuable: the ability to connect, to be real, to be vulnerable. And now, the one person who had taught him how to open his heart was gone. Daniel stood outside the bakery, his eyes scanning the warm interior through the window. He hadn't planned on finding her here, but fate had led him to the one place he couldn't avoid. Emily was behind the counter, her blonde hair tied back in a loose ponytail. She was busy with a customer, but Daniel couldn't take his eyes off her. She hadn't seen him yet, but he watched her move with the same quiet grace, her smile genuine as she handed over pastries. The smile that once brightened his darkest days now seemed distant. Hesitating, Daniel pushed open the door, the soft chime echoing. Emily looked up, eyes widening when she saw him, not in his usual suit, but in a worn-out shirt, sleeves rolled up, his eyes heavy from sleepless nights. Her breath caught, and for a moment she considered turning away. But before she could, Daniel spoke, his voice almost pleading. "Wait, just 1 minute." She froze, hand hovering over the counter, trying to maintain composure. "What are you doing here, Daniel?" Her voice was tight, avoiding his gaze. Daniel stepped forward, pulled a small bottle from his pocket and placed it on the counter between them. "It's lavender," he said softly. "I remember you said it reminded you of peace. I thought maybe it could help." Emily blinked, the faint fragrance filling the air. She tried to hold back tears, but they came anyway. "Do you think a scent can make me forget the lies, Daniel?" she whispered. He was silent for a moment. "No. But maybe it'll remind you that I never wanted to hurt you." The words hung in the air. Emily's chest tightened. "You said you didn't believe in beauty, so why did you come to me like it was the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen, only to pull away?" Daniel stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper. "I came to you because you made me want to believe. But I was afraid that I wasn't worthy of you." Emily's heart shattered. "You made me believe in something real," she said, voice breaking. "But you couldn't trust me enough to be honest. I can't love someone who hides from me." Before Daniel could respond, Emily turned and walked toward the door. The rain had begun to fall, heavy droplets hitting the pavement like tiny hammers. As she stepped into the storm, her heart ached. She wanted to be angry with him. She wanted to leave, forget everything. But something inside her wouldn't let go. She heard his footsteps behind her, but didn't stop. Her heart pounded as she quickened her pace, not sure where she was going, only that she had to leave. Then Daniel caught up. His hand shot out, grabbing hers, pulling her to a stop. "Don't go, not again," he said, breath coming in short bursts, voice thick with emotion. She turned, tears mixing with the rain. "Why not?" she asked, voice cracking. "What am I to you? A charity case? A fleeting distraction before you return to your perfect world?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her. "You're the only thing that makes this world worth living for," he murmured, his voice raw. Emily's breath caught, and she sank into his embrace, the rain falling around them, the world outside drowned by the storm. They stood there, their heartbeats matching the rhythm of the downpour. Daniel's hands were warm on her back, holding her close, as if afraid she might disappear. He whispered softly, "I've lived in mansions, but none of them have felt as warm as that little table where you invited me to share bread." Emily pulled back slightly, searching his eyes. "I never thought I belonged in your world, but it turns out you're the one who stepped into my little world first." They stood in the softening rain, hands entwined, as the bakery lights shone warmly behind them. For the first time, Emily felt the heavy weight in her chest lift, replaced by something simple, something true. They were no longer two separate worlds. They were one. The evening air was cool.